Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Checked Before. This time, Data's Day. Yeah, a day in the life of Data, if you will. Data's Day on It's All Been Checked Before. You can spend a day with us. Follow us on Facebook. It's All Been Checked Before. You can find us there. We got a group out there. And you can meet up with us and talk with us and other Star Trek fans. But also, a way to support us is patreon.com, of course, /IABD. You get great benefits every day in a way. If you use them rightly. But it's for pennies a day. You can become a member of our Patreon club. Yeah, it's a club. It's a club. We meet. It's a Patreon club. And, we're not going to keep you as busy as Data on Data's Day on It's All Been Checked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
And Keith.
Jimmy-Jerome. And we are here to talk about Data and his day. First impressions.
It was accurately entitled, so.
I should say so.
Yes.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I enjoyed it as a showcase of, I think, what Brent Spiner can do and just the character of Data.
Yeah.
Especially for continuity's sake. So.
Yeah, it's a cheesy title and the device is cheesy. I'll get more into that later as far as him writing his letter. But that said, it's also an effective device, and I thought it was a lot of fun. Every element of the episode, or every storyline in the episode, I should say, everywhere we went with Data, I enjoyed on some level. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I like special episodes that break format as long as they don't overdo them. I thought this was a good one. There were several things in this episode that I really wish had been set up before, okay, we're here already. But at the same time, it's a good episode, and there are some, as Keith mentioned, continuity things that are important here. Some firsts in this episode that we'll come back on. So yeah, I liked it a lot. I found it a very entertaining and enjoyable episode.
I knew it would start with the Data log, only because I knew the title, obviously.
Normally, I don't do research, but I was actually looking at the Memory Alpha page for this episode.
You don't do research?
No, I don't on this. No,
Jimmy just knows this stuff.
Yeah, it's if I know it, great. If I don't, oh well. But there were a couple things I was looking up on Memory Alpha for this one out of my own curiosity, and there were some really interesting notes on this episode at the bottom of Memory Alpha. So I'll go over a few of those that really stood out to me when we get further along. But yeah, this episode's cool. We start out, as Steven said, recording a log, but it's not just a log. It's a letter to Bruce Maddox from the episode Measure of a Man. Did you both remember who Bruce Maddox was as soon as his name was mentioned?
I think
yes, for a couple reasons.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago. Yeah, and I immediately was like, I've seen this device and it's been done a lot. And I had to check with Colleen because all I could think of was Josh and Melina at Sports Night. I don't know if you guys ever watched that.
Oh, one of my favorites.
I used to watch that a lot.
Yeah, they did it a couple of times on there, and I was just like, it made me laugh because I'm like, this is something a hack would do. By hack, I mean myself. But that said, those are good. And then I was like, did they do it on the West Wing? She's like, yeah, but everyone wrote a letter there. And then I was like, oh, so Aaron Sorkin stole from Star Trek. And then I remembered also that on early MASH, they did this a couple times. I know there was a Hawkeye episode, and it was the same kind of thing, and it was also a great episode in my memory. I was like, oh yeah, that's a great episode.
I think there are some hack examples that maybe make us go to hack, but when this is done well, I like the format of it.
Now, do you mean just in general a reason to do a monologue like a diary, for example, or do you mean specifically a letter to someone? Yeah,
just the device of, hey, I'm talking to you about this. And part of me is like, nobody writes letters like that. But it's like, back when I wrote letters, I did write letters like that. I mean, I guess people still write emails like that, I would imagine, if you haven't talked to somebody in a while. Mm-hmm. I heard from an old friend a couple of days ago. It was his birthday. And ours was very much like, well, I've been up to this. And da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So I guess it is. It's just not, it feels clunky, but it serves the story. Especially here, I thought it did.
It's like the old Civil War trope.
Yes.
Letter up to the battlefield.
I think
Rainy Hour did it once in a special, and we made Katie play the flute behind it to make it even more cheesy.
I love that. I think the problem for this example is that it's more of like an ongoing narrative of what's going on, and that doesn't usually fit into this format. And I think that's what would make it seem like it's off. I don't know. I think there could have been some other device that was used. It's useful to know that if you would frame it as something simple as I need to keep track of this so I can send this information to Bruce Maddox at some point, and then maybe an ongoing monologue of some sort of his thoughts or something.
Yeah,
fine. But
the part I'm thinking of, Keith, is when he's on the turbo lift and he's thinking about, usually I don't have these conversations or something like that with people. And I was like, this sounds more like an inner monologue than an actual letter. And I think, that's, and I guess if it's data, is there a difference?
Yeah.
Yeah. He could probably like note this, store that away.
I really appreciate it, and it'll come back around in the continuity at a much later date, that Data has kept in regular contact with Maddox and is helping him with his research. Like, Maddox started out as such an antagonist, and his mind was changed in that episode, and I think in a lot of shows we just would have never heard his name again. And I like this kind of follow-up, even though we don't see him in the episode.
I know initially I was like, why is he writing Maddox? And then, like you said, it makes sense anyway.
Yeah, it'll be followed up on in Star Trek Picard as well. So
a little bit.
Decades from now. Yeah. But yeah, I like that. I like we got to see some more of the normal day stuff that we don't get to see in a normal episode.
Yep.
And I liked that a lot as well.
Yes. Right off the bat, they do the night to day watch. And I know we've talked about this at length on here. Like, how do they know? And we're like, well, they probably regulate in some way. And I kind of like the lower lighting,
So see, I had an issue with that because I'm like, if I'm on the bridge and the lights are lowered, I'm going to fall asleep.
Right. Yeah, I just thought sexy time on the bridge or whatever, turn the lights down for the lovers in the house. Yeah.
Data is fully functional.
This we know.
I thought it was odd Data had the role of father of the bride. Couldn't you call it something else? Because he's not her father.
Right.
Yeah.
I assumed it was going to be the daughter he made in an earlier episode when they said that.
That's what I thought.
And I don't think, I made a note about this for next week to call ahead to the future. This episode seemed like it belonged after the next one.
So the part with Rosalind Chow, who plays Keiko. Oh, Keiko O'Brien by the end of this episode. And the next one does feel like it happened after the wedding. But my problem was I would have really liked to have seen her and Miles' relationship before the wedding.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It seems like the kinds of things that they were, I don't want to blow this right now. But
we'll talk more about that next week.
Yeah.
But I wish we'd seen Data. Like that. I wish we'd seen her interact with Data in an episode before he even introduced her. So we established the friendship.
That too.
And then I wish we would have seen at least a couple glimpses of their dating to just be like, hey, she's my longtime friend, introduced him a while ago. Now they're getting married and I'm going to be father of the bride and they're super important to me. And I'm super involved in their lives, even though you've never seen this before.
Right. I felt the same. People give away the bride that aren't the father all the time.
But they're usually called something else. Maybe Riker was just being glib.
Yeah. But, I thought that's what it all was. Yeah.
But I feel like they mentioned it a few times.
My immediate thought was weddings do not go well in the Enterprise, as we know from Balance of Terror, which I will mention Balance of Terror again later in the episode, later in our episode. But I'm almost to the point I think where I mentioned Balance of Terror enough on here that I should just start a minute by minute podcast of that particular episode.
Yeah, I definitely have Balance of Terror called out explicitly later in my notes. Yeah. But
so you can label each episode by the weight of the balance. Like which side of the terror is on.
Yeah.
Is it balanced more towards the terror or the joy? So Rosalind is best known at this point for the 2020 Mulan, according to IMDb.
Oh, yeah.
So she's still active. She was also in the Joy Luck Club, which still makes her top. She showed up in an episode of This Is Us last year. She has like 130 credits. Yeah, she's been around for a long time.
3 episodes of 6 Feet Under. So yeah, I was like,
she was.
I know her and I couldn't decide. And even going through the credits, I'm like, oh yeah. So yeah.
She'll only be in 8 episodes of TNG. This week and the next week, we've already got 25% of her run. But she'll be in 19 episodes of Deep Space Nine. And apparently she had been offered a lead role in Deep Space Nine. So they would have more of O'Brien's family in the mix. Kind of like, seeing Crusher family or whatever. But she declined to be a series regular. So 19 episodes over 7 seasons. You see her about 3 times a season.
Yeah.
The whole thing with her wanting to cancel the wedding was kind of ridiculous in my mind. I mean, the way they approached and handled the cold feet just didn't feel authentic to me.
Yeah.
I think that. Oh,
you go, Keith.
Well, all right. In retrospect, this is one of those tropes that comes up quite a bit when you have a sitcom wedding of some sort, or even sometimes a comedic episode that involves a wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that part of the way that this rang false is the fact that Data was involved at the beginning and just offered no resistance or thought about like why she would be trying to cancel it.
Mm.
He confirmed that it would make her happy, and that was the end of it. So he went and passed the message, and it locked in the choice for her without really, normally you'd have that whole scene of like, do I really want to do this? And the back and forth, and that just kind of.
But it didn't line up when he says his initial thing is, oh, it'll make her happy. But then later he says, well, seemed like she wasn't bringing emotion into it at all and was looking at it dispassionately. And I feel like if it's to make her happy, that's the opposite of a dispassionate, emotionless evaluation.
Mm.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was him adjusting to the situation, reevaluating.
Yeah.
The whole point was that he was not accurately depicting or assessing what was going on. And I thought that was a great comedic device too, just the backdrop of his thought process. But regardless of whether it should work under the circumstances, or perhaps it didn't. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is I understand why it seemed unnatural, and maybe it could have been portrayed better.
Yeah, I felt like it was just kind of like you guys kind of said, which is, well, everyone gets cold feet, so we don't need to explain this at all, what's going on here, or beyond this. And I know there's a lot of other stuff going on in this episode, and then I was like, did me and my second wife, Colleen, I don't remember ever having cold feet, but I do remember me and my first wife, we had a fight like the week before, but it was also the day after my bachelor party, so bachelor party weekend. So that makes sense.
Which is unrelated, I'm sure.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
They're setting up for the wedding. I like we get to see them setting up for the wedding, but they're setting up for the wedding in 10 forward. And look, I get that some people want to pick a place that they like and are familiar with, and maybe most weddings don't happen in 10 forward, but they just requested it, and so they accommodated. But it's like, this is the most used bar on the ship. Right. There are other rooms for ceremonies and performances. You didn't need to take over 10 forward. It felt like it was a budgetary thing of, we don't want to use another set. They already have several new sets in this episode. They didn't want to build another one.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's another of the tropes. This is essentially happening at the Peach Pit. That's where it's got to go. That's a 90210 reference. In case.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
That enterprise had its own chapel and theater.
Yeah.
And probably movie theater, I would imagine.
I think the theater and the chapel are the same room on the TOS.
Yes, I think that sounds right.
Which, I mean, people don't write angry letters, but aren't they essentially the same thing in real life?
Yeah, multi-use rooms. Yeah, I mean, when I got married.
No, I mean, church is just theater.
Oh, yeah. Well,
ooh, okay, there we are.
Send your angry letters to Keith.
And I will forward them on to Jimmy.
In that 10 forward scene, Geordi and O'Brien's reaction to Data coming in and saying, I've got some news that'll make you happy. She's canceled. I did enjoy that.
Yeah,
it was just a good
that was
Data
still
moment.
Funny. Yep.
They mentioned the Enterprise was commissioned 1,550 days ago, which I did see online that there's some things that don't quite line up, because that would have made it, based on certain information, that would have made this take place in January, but the Hindu holiday they mentioned actually happens in October, so there's some things that don't quite line up there, unfortunately, but that's a lot of days. I guess you forget how long it's been out there, and hearing it in days just makes it feel longer to me. I did like the list of events happening that day, though, including the holiday, and saying, and this was just an ordinary day. All this stuff normally happens and honestly, with a ship of 1,000 people, yeah, it probably does. We get to see the barbershop for the first time.
Huh.
The bullion that was cutting hair was not named in the episode. At IMDb, it's listed as Vassal, played by Shelley Desai. Shelley Desai, who probably looks familiar because he's been in so much.
Yeah.
If you look up Shelley Desai, I mean, he's still active here recently. He says he's best known for Escape from LA, Paul Blart 2, but he was in Men of a Certain Age. He's done a couple episodes of Archer, but he's just got one of those faces where I definitely have seen him in a ton of things. He's guest starred in a couple episodes of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
I love The Salon, and I especially love the way they colored that woman's hair. And
with the engineering tool?
Yeah, I wish mine could get colored that quickly and easily.
Yeah.
See, that prop's been used in engineering that they were using to the electronic thing. I don't know why it was in the barbershop. But the other thing about Vasal is that character appears in several more episodes played by the same actor, and he's always called Mott. So the script had him as Vasal, and this was something I saw on IMDb, but the Star Trek Encyclopedia considers him the same character, and there's no explanation for why. At least they don't say his name in this episode, so they can just call him Mott going forward.
It could be a first and last name, or
Mott Vasal.
Yeah, I assumed that Vasal, but when I saw a glimpse of it in the credits, I thought that was maybe the Romulan. But,
no, that was the Bolian. I did not recognize the actor, though. Now that I looked him up on IMDb, I'm like, oh, yeah, I know who he is, but I didn't recognize him in the makeup.
Yeah. My first fashion note is right before this, and when Ambassador T'Pel comes on, and I kept listening like, are they saying T'Pel? What is going on here? I felt better when they said it was T'Pel, but I liked just fashion. I liked her ensemble. As far as Vulcan ensembles go, I dug it.
Is the headdress typical?
Say it was fine, but that hat, when she took off the whole big thing and it was just the red thing, I did not like that.
I didn't like that as much, but the whole, all the pieces together, I liked it. Yeah.
If you're wondering if Vulcans ever reuse names, because it feels like they don't, there are two T'Pels in Star Trek. There's this there's this T'Pel, Ambassador, and then Tuvok's wife in Voyager is also named T'Pel.
What do you mean by use names?
Like, how many Spocks are there on Vulcan? Would you think it's reuse names?
Oh, you said reuse names. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Like, there's more than one Keith in the world, I think. So, but yeah, it felt to me like Vulcans probably didn't reuse them for some reason, but apparently at least T'Pel has been reused. She was played, by the way, by Sierra Pucher. I don't know how to say the name, but she has been she's only got 32 credits, but she's best known for What Women Want, Bronco Billy, Three Women. This is her only Trek credit, and I don't really recognize most of her credits.
She looked super familiar to me, but I hadn't seen any of her other credits.
Okay.
I don't think. Not
even the episode of Touched by an Angel?
No. That must have been the one I skipped. I had church that night.
The replicator room was cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting concept, actually. The idea that they could, it's almost like their online shopping room to maybe streamline something.
Though apparently there's no wedding registry. They just have to look at typical wedding gifts, which is kind of dumb. But also, every time we see their quarters, I feel like the quarters are relatively small. There's not a lot of room for personal things. And when we see people transferring ships, they really just carry a duffel bag. Mm-hmm. So the idea that they would give them all of these wedding gifts doesn't really line up with the way we see them live.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Just kind of send it all home or put it in storage.
Interesting note about the replicator room, and this is one of my Memory Alpha notes. That is the Enterprise bridge from the Star Trek The Motion Picture, Star Trek II The Wrath of Khan, Star Trek III The Search for Spock. They redressed it for the replicator room.
Wow.
I know it's hard to tell because you only see a corner of it, but that's the original Enterprise bridge from the movies.
I guess it's at some point it might be worth trying to break down exactly how possessions would even work, things that you can replicate, or if they're why. All right, yeah, I recall that in Voyager eventually there are replicator rations for a good reason, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if such a thing would ever exist on a normal starship, or if there's some basis for, I don't know, trade or something that would make a gift that you order special in some way. But,
well, see, I think like we see if Spock and Bones give Kirk like a book and glasses, antiques. Mm-hmm. I think those are valuable, but just something from the replicator, I don't really feel like for the most part that is valuable. Now, to your point of, is it rationing and stuff? Voyager had to do it because they were away from home and they couldn't just recharge. Right. I think the Enterprise regularly recharges itself at the nearest gas station, electronic charging station.
I think getting somebody something from the replicator is like getting to get to a Seinfeld reference. It's like giving someone cash for their birthday.
Or a gift card.
Yeah. I mean, it's still a nice gesture, but.
So I mentioned the bridge being reused. Also, the transporter room is redressed in this episode a little bit. I don't know if you noticed, the pads are more well defined, and it will be for the rest of the series because they spent budget upgrading the transporter room for Star Trek VI, which filmed just before this, and then they just brought the walls back in for next gen, but kept the pads from Star Trek VI.
Huh.
So Star Trek VI is coming up on our.
It's next season.
Okay,
but they were already filming. They were already working on it. So that helped with the budget of the season a little bit when they could reuse things between the two.
And I don't know if it's this episode or last week, but I think we've either matched or surpassed how many TOS episodes. We've
Makes
watched
sense.
more TNG now, yeah.
And we're only about halfway through TNG. Not quite halfway.
Yeah.
So Data asked Crusher to teach him how to dance. The dancing doctor, which was cute, and so was the lip zip thing that they did. But when they actually do dance, and I'm skipping a couple notes, but when they actually dance in the Crusher dance studio, which I was like, hey, another new set this week. They used, I don't know if you noticed, the overhead shots. They were using a stunt double for Data.
Yeah, the guy wrote down immediately, and I was focused more on Data than Crusher, but I was like, are these doubles? And then
Crusher wasn't.
Yeah, Crusher was not, but Brent Spiner was like, I feel good about my dancing, but not about this part. He didn't feel good enough to.
Well,
so they got him a double.
Gates McFadden is a professional dancer and choreographer,
right?
So good way to use her skills.
I wrote, wow, they're getting super meta with Gates, which is great. And then, and I don't think I wrote this down, but I thought about it later. It's like, when Data says, hey, teach me to dance, and then the whole scene they're doing all the tap dancing, I never once thought about, this doesn't make sense for a wedding. I was just
I did. Okay. I was thinking that.
Me too. And I wasn't sure if they mentioned it or not. And so.
Right. I was just like, okay, yeah, I love tap. I did some tap dancing in high school, whatever. I was thinking about all that stuff. And this is a cool scene. And then it's like, oh, the one obvious thing is this isn't going to work. It made me laugh even harder when he got around to it. But
that makes me think that was in Crusher's contract, or they just wanted to be extra nice to Gates.
Yeah. It's
give me a masturbatory dance scene this season,
and see Data do kind of get it down pretty quickly, but not be able to do the simple dance.
Yes,
and when she was talking about leading, it made me think, if my ex-wife is going to listen to the episode, this might be the episode for her. She used to always say the problem with us when we dance is we both wanted to lead, so which could be a problem in the 24th century. I mean, now too, but she could lead, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
it is. Yeah, it's symptomatic of the time that it came out, I'm sure.
Yeah, with the box dance, I mean, I don't know that I could tell by looking at a couple like, oh, she's obviously leading. I guess I could if I studied them, but then people would be like, hey, freak, get out of here. Why are you staring at us like that?
I have a few things about the dancing. I love the timing, the way they timed the request. When the other crewman happened to be walking by, like right as he was saying, I'd like you to teach me to dance. And that little glance he gave, like, all right, well, whatever. It was just, that was awesome. Well, I don't know if you've ever watched any of like the dance competition shows like I used to at some point or another. Well, the thing that made the concept interesting is you have people coming from different backgrounds doing certain kinds of things, and they have to learn choreography of some sort. She was saying, this is a simpler dance, but in some ways it isn't. It involves a different type of approach than learning something that seems more physically complicated to do, but is still just a repeating pattern of some sort, or just do this step. So I thought
technical
that was
precision is easier for Data than something he has to feel his way through.
Right. Yes. I love the idea of that. That is a great way of representing how a computer would approach a problem as well. I mean, you can't just say, okay, just kind of do this, kind of feel it and go. You have to feel it how. So there's that. I noted the overhead shot, and that does look like a stunt double. But for the parts that there weren't, I still thought that was pretty impressive. I mean, there were parts where it was obvious it was still him doing something. And
Spiner can dance, but I guess next to Gates McFadden, he felt not up to it, which I get.
Well, I mean, still tap dancing again, the technical precision of an actual real life human being trying to do all that stuff. It's like,
that's what I'm saying. Spiner has dancing talents. Yeah.
No, my point is that that's reasonable for him not to try to be expected to be able to tackle that from the overhead shots.
True. We get to see Data's cat Spot for the first time, which that's why I first started researching, because it sure didn't feel like it was a first introduction that he had a cat.
Was he named?
Yeah. I don't think they mentioned the name in this episode, but Spot will be in many episodes and a couple of the films as well. Played by like 8 cats over time, I believe. But yeah, this is our first spotting.
And of course, the product placement there, Feline Supplement 74. That's what I buy slowly.
I didn't catch that.
Memory Alpha says Data's programmed like 125 different supplements, but Spot has a preferred one they use in most episodes, and it's not that one. It's a different one.
Interesting. That's awesome.
So when they decide to do the course correction to the neutral zone, again, that's when my mind first went to Balance of Terror, because a wedding on the Enterprise, Romulans show up.
Yep.
I'm like, oh, because like you said, in Star Trek, it's almost never a smooth walk to the altar, O'Brien and Keiko being the exception, that they actually have a happy, I mean, cold feet doesn't count. They have a nice, normal, orderly wedding. But the Romulan parallels, that has to be purposeful, that they're calling back Balance of Terror. And the fact that Picard's wedding remarks are almost the exact same as Kirk's.
Yes.
It's got to be purposeful.
I immediately stopped the episode, then went and pulled up Balance of Terror and was like, because I was like, that's got to be exactly. It's almost exactly.
It is, and that
Kirk says shipmasters. I think it's and then some of the stuff after is not the same, but then Kirk gets interrupted because the Romulans. But yeah.
The scene where O'Brien asks Data to intervene, he calls him Sir over and over again throughout the whole scene. And that felt really awkward and uncomfortable, considering this is the man that is supposed to be like a close family friend giving away the bride. I think in that moment, I get when they're on duty, him calling him Sir, because he's the second officer of the ship. But in that moment, he should have been saying Data, not Sir.
Yeah, I thought they were doing that like as a reminder that Data is a commander and people serve under him. But I thought that's not the spot to do it. I agree.
No. I did enjoy, I don't know why, maybe this is mean, but I really enjoyed that Troy couldn't help Keiko and didn't even try. It was just like, whatever. And they like, I talked to Troy. She was useless.
Yeah. Well, because Troy's like, I was, because Troy gave the advice, well, just don't try to help them. I'm like, wait a minute, didn't you already try to help and you failed?
Right. And I think her attitude there is, well, I could help them, so no one can. When Data goes to talk to Keiko, we got another new set, the botany lab. Keiko is the botanist, which we'll hear more about. But
so was that a Sulu shout out? Because we know he was into that. He was
another Asian character. Yeah. I don't know.
I enjoyed her overalls as a former Ohio certified nurseryman. I enjoyed her horticultural outfit. It's another fashion note.
Data thinking that growing old was a key component of marriage was an interesting conversation, and him saying that someday he may want to get married. I thought that was an interesting. This episode's full of interesting insights into data, and that was a good one.
I think we talked about it a few weeks ago about the idea that I think I brought up the Superman syndrome, that all these people, Data's going to outlive all these people. He's going to watch his friends die repeatedly. It's also Requiem for Methuselah. They talk about it, right?
I mean, Data doesn't, but at this point, he probably thinks he will.
He could, He could be
spoiler
something. But again, I'll reference my ex-wife. She used to always talk about us growing old together. I guess all couples do on some level, or they talk about not growing old together. I like that moment too. I like it when it comes up with Superman, because it's like, oh yeah, this is kind of sad. It's great, but it's sad.
The scene where T'Pel tests Data is very suspicious, and immediately your hackles are raised, like, there's something up with her.
I love the way that was done. Again, this was a great use for the format. Whether or not, it came, they got there genuinely, it's still just the use of that, the cliche about Vulcans never lying.
So Data says she's incapable of lying, which I'm like, by now, surely they know that's not true.
Maybe not.
I get that's the myth Vulcans push, but you have to have enough examples at this point. I guess anytime they caught Spock in a lie, he could be like, well, I'm half human. But
I thought he was just going to go with it. Well, maybe she's exaggerating, because I thought he was going to kind of explain it away, and he didn't.
No, he just took her at her word, and that just to me did not feel right.
But
I should be smarter than that.
I don't think that's quite the case. I mean, the specifics of what he was saying was that he was indicating in his own way, and this is that parenthetical thing that they like to throw a lot, and this is mirrors again the whole Klingons and honor, Vulcans lying, data and emotions and instinct and guts and so forth. He was saying that I wish that I had the capacity to be suspicious, in effect, while demonstrating that he was suspicious. He was pointing that out to say that something didn't seem quite right there. But, I don't really have a gut, so I can't say that there wasn't. I wish I had a gut, because I would think that something was wrong if I did. Just the irony there that he's demonstrating. Also, just the intrigue of it all. Earlier on, since we've gotten this storyline, one of my earlier notes was to force the format of Data being in every scene. They had Picard consulting him instead of Troy for something you would think that he would. Have you seen patterns that would indicate that the Romulans have been doing such and such, or they feel this way, or what do you think their actions are going to be? And my theory on that was maybe he was doing that because he thought that the argument would carry more weight coming from an android.
Sure. Since
he was dealing with a Vulcan.
I appreciated we didn't have to see every detail of that Romulan plot. That it was like, we got the glimpses, but that wasn't the focus of the episode. I feel like we've already had stories like that, and they can be really good, but I appreciated that this was minimized.
Yep.
Oh, I just saw on here the holographic dance partner that Data dances with after Beverly leaves. A Memory Alpha had said the actress was unknown, but on IMDb it has it credited to Jane Sibbett, who was Ross's wife Carol in Friends.
Oh.
I was like, that's where the research pays off, because I looked into that at the end of the episode. I'm like, whoa, okay, it makes sense.
T'Pel, dead apparently. Romulan trickery, and the Romulan is acting so betrayed, like he protests too much.
I love that so much. I love the way it was delivered. I love the strategy behind every word that he was using, and it was just.
Did you think something was up with the death?
I mean, it seemed like it. I mean, it seemed like they were trying to portray that, but at the same time, I thought there was enough plausibility behind the way it was delivered that it could have been a third party involved.
Yeah, I thought the mystery itself of what happened was cool, and Data figured it out. As far as us not knowing that something was going to go wrong, that wasn't a surprise. And I thought her actual death was it was so fast, and it was
furious.
It was tell not show, because it seemed like her death happened faster than energized. Than watching Scotty push the buttons up and pull them down or whatever. So
maybe that was a clue.
Again, maybe that moment I didn't love, but it introduced the mystery of it, which I did like the way Data went about it.
Well, see, O'Brien was on duty, and he's such a great transporter chief, and he's so insistent that he didn't do anything wrong that I'm just like, okay, she's actually dead. I don't know. I don't know what was going on with her, but she's dead.
I knew it wasn't something he did.
Now,
also, and I know I dwell on this every episode of this show, which I guess is every episode of TNG anymore. But at some point, I think Picard or Riker calls down to O'Brien, and he doesn't even touch his. And I just thought
he's just that good.
Do you think maybe you guys don't know, but maybe we can just speculate. Do you think on TNG they were like, you know what, let's suppose they've advanced and they don't need the communicators, or they were just like, you know what, we don't want to mess with those anymore. As a plot thing or whatever. And as a TOS fan, I'm like, I love getting the communicator out, but on the other hand, I'm like, that's one less thing. It makes sense that they would advance and they wouldn't need that. And that watching this show, I don't get anxious every episode that, where's the communicator? Oh, they took their communicators. I mean, they'd have to rip it off their body. I guess
which it does come right off. Yeah.
Yeah, they usually jam them or something, or there's some other way to stop them.
We've seen characters remove the badge, and it's almost like a Velcro. It comes right off.
Yeah.
I guess so. My explanation for why they sometimes need to hit them and sometimes don't, and this is something I'm pulling out of my butt right this minute. This isn't something I've read or have knowledge of, but the way it feels justified to me is if you used to have to tap them And new functionalities, you don't have to tap them, but a lot of these officers served when you had to tap them, so they're still doing the habit. And so you get the mix, and it's both works because it's new functionality.
I like that.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Because, we get something new. The old habit's hard to break.
Yeah.
So it really struck me as odd by this point of the episode that everybody's at work today, including O'Brien and Keiko. It's their wedding day. They don't get like the day off. She doesn't go get her hair done. They don't have a day of preparation.
Well, it seems like a lot was going on.
Jordy got his hair done.
Yeah. Jordy apparently was in there last week. He's getting his hair done every week, the sassy man.
Well,
real quick, because you guys are real into this, probably more into advisors than I am, or than whatever, but I'm not casting aspersions. How does it work when he looks in the mirror?
It clearly can't.
Right. It shouldn't work as it should be. Yeah.
He must just feel it and it doesn't feel right.
Yeah. And maybe the barber or so.
Was he holding like a regular physical mirror? Did we see that?
Yeah. We didn't see that it was a mirror. We just knew it looked like a mirror. It was in front of him.
I mean, it could be like a tablet of some sort, and it could be giving the visual feedback. It's the same concept of him looking at a monitor.
Oh, man. So Data, of course, calls back Sherlock Holmes once more to do his investigation.
Yes. Yeah.
Was the idea of them having to work that day? I mean, maybe they didn't schedule far enough in advance, or maybe they scheduled too far in advance and didn't realize that the ambassador was going to be on board to have to do this thing. And this is too like an important situation for them to be able to take the day off.
Keiko really had to make sure those plans were right in the
I mean, if O'Brien had to do something, then what was the point of her doing whatever? She might as well just...
O'Brien did have to do something. We even had transport technician Hubble back for the third of her 5 episodes, played by April Grace. We saw the second transport technician in this episode.
I'm just saying high alert. And obviously something went wrong, so...
I just think they should have had the day off. Yeah. So for Data's investigation, he asked Crusher to check the genetic sample to make sure it really was T'Pel. And she's like, that's not part of my normal process. Really? You don't verify the DNA as part of your normal process? That felt really clunky.
That's the other doctor's job, the forensic doctor that they have on board.
It seems pretty easy to do. So
right?
How about you just do it from now?
We saw the Romulan bridge, or part of it anyway, but of course there's no people on it except for Mendek.
Yeah.
They even had this cool shot from the side where we got to see a lot of the side of the bridge beside him, but there was nobody there.
And I'll reference Balance of Terror again. It seems like that's the thing. It's like, well, Balance of Terror, you only had 5 people.
Yeah.
And they were in a small room. We're going to stick with that. That's what Romulans do. They don't want a big bridge. They want a small bridge.
Well, you got to be sneaky and keep everybody under wraps. And
they save the big quarters for places where their commanders can seduce Vulcans.
Mendek was played by Alan Scarf, who's best known for Lethal Weapon 3, Andromeda, Kingdom Hospital. He's got 85 credits, but he hasn't been active in quite a while, even though he's not listed as dead. British actor. I thought it was fine. He does have a different role on an episode of Voyager, and he will play a different role on a later episode of Next Gen, so Trek's used him a few times. Keiko laughing at Data for his confusion on things seemed a little bit cruel. Are they that good of friends that she just laughs at him for being an android, and that's cool?
Which part? I don't remember that.
I think it was at the wedding when she tells Data, "Oh, the wedding's back on." He's like, "Why? What's going on?" And she just laughs at him, and I'm like,
"Yes,
okay."
Maybe that's maybe that is their thing. Like, Data's their punching bag, makes them feel better about themselves. They're terrible people.
The wedding was very Japanese styled, which was cool.
Yeah,
I had mixed feelings about that, but it's just I don't know.
Yeah.
Keiko seemed very into her culture in the next episode too.
To clarify, because I this is probably not something I can just leave hanging. Right. It's more the decision to. I don't know if it felt organic to me. I guess
Keith hates Japanese culture.
Whether it's all right. I guess what I'm trying to decide is whether or not this is something stereotypical they threw in that seems like it would be unrealistic, or is it something that is inspirational, for lack of a better word, that cultures can persist into the future to that extent.
But when her great-grandpa Hikaru Sulu talked to her, no, that's not
right.
I don't think there's any relation.
I enjoyed it, but I agree with you, Keith, that there's some element of like, okay. I mean, I guess we could have. Was O'Brien in a kilt? Could he have been? Yeah.
Right. There's just a little, something to, I don't know. It was it was like the ceremony itself, or what the elements they threw in were just vague and kind of stereotypical enough that it seemed like, well, was this necessary, or could there have been some other lead in? This again would have been mitigated if they had explored the relationship before we got to the wedding,
right?
And so we can know something else about the character.
She was a traditionalist, or something.
Yeah, or to what extent that the tradition is actually even really truly being reflected in this ceremony. But like here's some stock music that we have that sounds Asian.
Right.
Here we go.
Yeah, I don't. That to me, that might be the touch that takes it over the top. But that was the something old from the wedding. The something borrowed was the speech from Kirk and Terror. And
I apparently remember so little about that episode. I have pulled up here and look.
Oh, that's one of the good. That's one of the really good ones, Keith.
Yeah,
I have to go back and start.
It's obviously one of my favorites, and that's one of the reasons I love it so much is that opening part and all the wedding stuff that happens in it.
What I need is a podcast that covers that episode.
I think I'm going to have to do this. So it also made me very worried about Keiko for this episode, and spoiler alert for next week's episode also, that she was going to suffer the same fate as Angela Tomlinson.
Oh, nope.
Groom. But yeah, I was very tense, I have to say.
I mean, I wrote.
Would you say you were balancing on the edge of terror?
I would say I was aiming the neutral zone towards terror is where I was.
No, it was a rare successful wedding to the point it was noted.
Yeah. We
got O'Brien's full name, Miles Edward O'Brien. I don't think we knew that yet.
That's exotic.
The Juarez baby boy was a cute little scene.
Yeah.
At the end. The other wedding fashion, the other fashion note I had was Keiko's wedding dress. So I guess that kind of plays into what we were already talking about, the elements with the culture.
My one other fashion note I'll save for a little later.
We met a new tactical officer this week, Ensign Kellogg. She was up at the tactical station. Riker was flirting with her, and
that's
Dr. Worf. I don't know that she really had anything to note. I just noticed her because she was beautiful. But when I looked her up, she's in this was her first episode, but she's in 45 additional episodes. She's basically in the rest of the series and a couple of the movies too.
So you're saying that you're pleased that Kellogg was serialized?
Yes. Yes, I am. We're going to see a lot of her. I'm happy about that.
Sorry.
So during that part, actually, that was one of my previous notes. Data says, there's a correlation between humor and sex. And I'm like, yeah, there is. Ideally, it stops before you start having sex. Sure. Then you're in trouble. But I don't know. Is that correlation versus causation?
I don't know. It was more specifically about this success rate of courtship, I guess. It was
Yeah. I wrote the Enterprise corners well, because when that other Romulan ship shows up and it's like, we got to get out of here. It's like, it's
air brakes.
I almost heard the screeching of the tires, and it turned a lot easier than I would have thought. But that's why it's the flagship starship. I do. Actually, I have two more fashion notes, but this is the last one. And the body of the show. Troy, another great outfit at the wedding. She's been crushing it.
I didn't catch it like anybody else at I just saw like the glimpse up, and I saw like the bit of the ceremony, but I didn't see all the other attendees. I
get almost like a text alert in my brain when Troy shows up in a new outfit at this point. And my last note from the show is from this episode. At the very end, they mentioned someone got a holodeck injury. They broke the rib. I'm like, of course, that happened in the holodeck.
This episode was directed by Robert Weimer. This was his second episode directing. He's got a few credits. Story by Harold Aptar, then written by Harold Aptar and Ronald D. Moore. Ronald D. Moore, one of our key people. Harold, this was the only episode of Star Trek he wrote. He was a writer for Ryan's Hope and a script story editor for Walker, Texas Ranger, and Earth Final Conflict. And
sounds like Apgar.
It does sound like that, yeah.
Every time I heard the name Ronald D. Moore, I keep thinking it's just like a really formal children's name, like Ronaldy. No, it's not Ronnie, it's Ronaldy.
I keep thinking that was Ronald McDonald's alias when he robbed banks.
Yeah, Ronald E. McDonald. One thing I passed at the beginning was just zeroing in on the scene with Worf and Data. They did in general, they did a really good job of framing each interaction with Data in the sense of him discussing, here's what I have in common with this person. Here's where we differ. Here's what I get out of our relationship in a way. And I think that was a good device for new viewers, old viewers, whatever. Just it was a good way to frame things. And just the comedic value of Worf describing his impression of what human ceremonies were like.
Yeah.
It's not that far off in a way, for the way just like an introvert would look at whatever's going on. Yeah, it's just a lot of talking and dancing and this. I just love that sort of thing. What else? Yeah. Another example of the irony behind what Data was saying, and I love the way they demonstrated that. Again, you see Data tapping his hand nervously and then noticing it. Just the way that came about, the way that he showed he was doing that, and the way that it sort of offset what he was actually saying to Maddox. So it's just another one of those. If I only had a brain or a heart or whatever. But you had it all along. It's one of and God, we keep coming back to that. There's an entire series, and Jimmy and I both talk about the idea of what we think is or what we know is going to be coming up, and it feels like it's wrong to give him an emotion chip. When it just,
I think the more we talk about, the more I'm convinced they shouldn't have done that.
I talked to somebody about that the other day, and I was like, I said we don't really like that on the show.
So. I think the last thing I have here, and I wish I could remember the other thing I was about to write down, but didn't. Was this the first instance we have of someone of a Vulcan or a Romulan pretending to be a Vulcan? Because it's something you'd think should naturally come up more, and it's like, well, of course. Why wouldn't they suspect this to happen more often?
I'm not sure.
What exactly happened there?
She'd been infiltrating the Federation for a long time, gathering information with earning her way up to high security clearance, gathering information, and then she was returning home to give them the information.
Okay, because I couldn't understand if somebody had taken her place that was a Romulan.
It did sound like that she may have been replaced a long time ago, rather than like an invented identity, but I could be wrong.
Or I didn't catch that.
I couldn't tell if it was that or like she played the long game. It sounds like she played the long game.
It was definitely a long game. Yeah. I know we'll see more of the Romulan Vulcan subterfuge in the future of pretending to be a different species than you are. And at this point, by the time we get to Star Trek Picard, it almost seems cliche when it happens. But this may be the first time it happens.
Is there a clearly different species between Romulan and Vulcan?
Yeah, they offshot so long ago. They do have different genetic material. You can scan them and tell the difference.
Is interesting.
I think physically they appear very similar, although you'll notice that when they do the makeup for the Vulcans, they're mostly human and they do the eyebrows and stuff. But the Romulans, they tend to give a little more shape to their face.
If you do like a 23-33andMe, you can see how much is Vulcan or Romulan or what Andorian or whatever.
Yeah.
Or what the area of the planet or country that it shares the most DNA.
Yeah, I was being way too broad with that. Yeah.
You have to read the disclaimers.
You got to go real deep into it. Yeah.
So do you think O'Brien and Keiko seemed like a couple in this episode?
It seemed like they spent so much time shooting them separately, and without the back, we needed more. We've already gotten this. It's just there wasn't enough build up to this to make this feel like a authentic interaction or problem.
It felt like they were acting like a couple rather than being a couple.
It felt like a couple that was getting married because it was time to get married, and I've known those couples. It's like, hey, you know what? I'm in my 30s. Let's get married. And again, spoiler, next week I feel like we get into more of a not just a couple, but a married couple too. But in some ways, but we'll get to that then. But
we'll have a lot of episodes to get to know them as a couple. But from this first interaction, it just feels odd. They don't have chemistry. It's just
it's just so abrupt.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Were they mentioned, or was Keiko mentioned at least? Wasn't he on a date or something in earlier episodes?
Keiko was not mentioned before this. I don't know if we ever saw him on a date in earlier episodes or not.
We never saw them, certainly, but I could have sworn that maybe it was a joke that you made at some point where that's why he wasn't at card games or something. Or
I mean, that is a guy. As you started to say, maybe it was a joke. My first thought was, oh, that's why he's not at the poker games.
Yeah.
But no, it's never made clear.
I will say while we're here that Keiko Bryan, that's my annoying. Them as a couple, Keiko Bryan are my annoyance of the episode.
The name?
Keiko Bryan? Okay.
Yeah.
I just made up the name. That's their celebrity name. Keiko Bryan.
Okay. I thought, since her name is double O's, that's annoying. So
yeah, that too.
Keiko is her first name and O'Brien's his last name. So for a couple name, they wouldn't really.
Right.
Yeah.
It would be like Maiko or Keikles.
Yeah.
Keikles.
Oh man.
But yeah.
My annoyance is T'Pel. We got a couple interesting scenes from her, but mostly it felt weird. And then her turn of like, I've been a Romulan this whole time felt awkward.
Yeah. It's a great story, but I'm not blaming the actress. I'm blaming that she just didn't get enough time to show.
See, I like that they didn't give it a lot of time and focus.
Yeah.
The scenes we had, I feel like the actors or something needed to think through the rest of the scenes so that they could make it feel natural, and it wasn't there.
Oh, that's a good point. They were playing up I don't want to use the word stereotypical, but the trope that they had established for themselves.
Yeah.
And I guess in some ways that's what was going on here. We have the intrigue plot. We have these little mysteries that are going on, and they kind of cut to the chase. These are the beats where you're going to do it. But I hadn't processed it until you said it. It did come down to, it didn't feel like they had actually gone through the steps mentally of processing the in-between parts to make it feel like it meant more.
So who was your annoyance, Keith?
I gave Wesley a 1.
I'm not asking about Wesley anymore, except for the 3 episodes he's in. I think 4 episodes he's in.
As much as I hate to agree with Steven as often as I do, I think that is just,
Keiko Bryan.
Yeah, I that's something there.
Okay,
it wasn't. That seems like the best option. I can't.
Alternate episodes.
Now I want cake. My alternate episode is Troy's Day, so I want to go through a day with Troy. So
my alternate episode is to actually do more with the wedding. I feel like the wedding was supposed to be this important thing, but they were all at work all day and everything. So I wanted to see more of a wedding on the Enterprise.
Yeah, I would have liked a bigger crowd at the wedding. I feel like O'Brien would be loved.
Oh yeah,
and a lot of people get the day off for that.
Yeah,
I think the
Guinan wasn't even there, and 10 forward was her place.
10 forward, yeah.
She got the day off because of it.
You can have that wedding here, but I'm not going to be here. That was my Whoopi Goldberg impersonation. Nailed it.
So for Crush, man, there's so many choices. There's Kellogg at Tactical. There's Keiko. The nurse or doctor that was in sickbay with Crusher was beautiful. There was the ops station girl that filled in. There was the transporter technician Hubble.
Yeah. Who's
your choice?
This could be a battle the rest of the season, barring any Seinfeld entries in this, but Jane Sabet, I was in love with her from when she was on, this is going way back, Herman's Head, an early Fox sitcom.
Wow. I used to watch that.
Should have been awesome, but wasn't. It had her, it had Hank Azaria, had a couple other really good actors on it. The scripts were just never great, but she was on that. She was not even the love interest. She was the one that Herman of Herman's Head wanted. William Ragsdale was Herman. They wanted to be in love with her. Had the hots for her since then. So yeah, and great dress also in this episode. So I'm going to
holographic dancer.
Yeah, I'm not going to give up on Sharia. I think is still going to be in the mix when we get to the season's end. But
sure,
for now, I could not say no to Jane Sabet, and never have been able to.
I'd say I was very tempted by Keiko. I'll probably end up picking her at some point, but I'm going to go with Kellogg. Probably because I did all the research.
I like you, Jimmy, this might have been, I did more research than usual into the super ancillary people on the bridge.
I guess this is one of the few episodes where that it actually crossed my mind that I would have to think about that while I was watching. So I would say the Wesley's replacement.
The ops officer.
Yeah.
Or no, she would have been the navigator. Yeah, she was.
Assuming that was Wesley's replacement.
Wait.
You know who I mean, though.
No, there was a guy in Wesley's seat. There was a girl in Data's seat that kept taking his seat.
Yeah.
So she was the ops officer.
Okay.
Yeah, she was on my list of people I just mentioned. I don't know her name, but she was beautiful as well.
I was paying so much attention to her that I also focused on the way they moved the helm station away. It just kind of moves.
Well, they've been doing that for a while. You pull it back to get up.
Yeah, I especially focused on it at that moment. You
reminded me of the thing that I forgot to write down. That was a discussion about the communicators having to tap them and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Another explanation could be that they're able to customize the settings.
Ooh.
And it's
that's true. Yeah.
Some people would want the privacy option, or to make sure that they really wanted to communicate something.
Well, Riker's got privacy turned on.
Yeah. And people like McCoy are constantly accidentally calling people.
Right.
Ranking the episode, let's put it up against the other Data episodes we've had this season. Better or worse than Brothers?
I think I like this one more. Even though as we talked, I felt like we hit on more warts, but it also kind of goes to what you said about the Romulan storyline, Jimmy. It's like, it was a smaller thing. So overall, the warts didn't bother me as much because I thought collectively we got to see so many different facets of the ship. And I enjoyed it.
I could go either way, but I could go above if you two both want to go above.
Yeah, this is of course the recency bias, I think, in some ways, but I feel like this one's better, or at least more enjoyable because of. Yeah. Anyway,
I mean, I certainly wouldn't go below Brothers as Future Imperfect. I certainly wouldn't go below that, but I could go either way on Brothers. Above Brothers is The Best of Both Worlds Part 2.
Yeah, I think I'd go below.
Yeah, it's hard to pick like a comedy episode is like the best. And I know that when we get to the wrap up, I'm going to have forgotten this. I'm going to go, why is this above Brothers? Because of Lore or Lar.
Yeah.
Right. Lar?
Lore.
Yeah, Lar.
Lore.
Is it Lore? Lore. Okay.
It's Lore.
I did that before.
Data's brother is Lore.
Which of those episodes had more Brent Spiner?
Brothers had more Brent Spiner.
Yeah.
I'm already regretting it.
Okay.
We'll get back to that, I guess.
I'd already put it in under Best of Both Worlds.
You can always change it at the end of the season. So
I didn't think it was going to beat it. So that leaves it number 4 for the season.
Okay.
Next week, we talk The Wounded. After being fired upon by a Cardassian vessel, Picard races against time to find out the facts behind the Cardassian commander's claim that the Federation attacked one of their outposts and Donald Trump won the 2020 election. Until then, live long.
Write more letters. And prosper.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?